everyone! All week we've been talking about the volume of spheres. Today we're talking about the volume of a hemisphere. A hemisphere is half of a sphere. For example, if you think about the globe, the top half between the equator and the North Pole is called the northern hemisphere, and the bottom half between the equator and the South Pole is called the southern hemisphere. We are in the northern hemisphere. South America is in the southern hemisphere. Hemisphere, again, just means half of a sphere. So, when we find the volume of a hemisphere, it's the same volume of a sphere with times 1/2 at the end, since it's just half a sphere. So the volume is 4/3 times pi times radius times radius times radius times a half. Or we could say V equals 4/3 pi r cubed times 1/2. Now if you really wanted to, you could multiply 4/3 times 1/2 at the beginning and make a new formula, which is volume equals 4/6 times pi times r cubed. The way I got that is I did 4 times 1, that gives me 4, and 3 times 2, that gave me 6. However, I'm going to use this formula because to me it makes more sense to just memorize the formula for a sphere and then cut it in half when it's half a sphere versus trying to think of a whole new formula. If you are using this formula, you should then simplify. 4/6 becomes 2/3. So another formula for a hemisphere would be 2/3 pi r cubed when you're doing a hemisphere instead of a whole sphere. Okay, let's look at two examples. So this first example is a hemisphere with a radius of 6. You can tell it's a radius because it goes from the center of the sphere, or of the hemisphere, to the edge of the hemisphere. So I'm going to use volume equals 4/3 times pi r cubed, and then times 1/2 since it's half a sphere. So this is the formula for a sphere, and then times 1/2 because it's only half of a sphere. I'm going to plug things in. So my volume is 4/3, 3.14 for pi. The radius cubed would be the radius 3 times, so 6 times 6 times 6, and then times 1/2 because it's half of a sphere. Now, I do want everyone to know that in order for your answer to match the answer on our homework, you need to use 3.14, not your pi button. Some of you are using the pi button and it gives you a different answer, and then it doesn't match the answer that's entered into our Google form. So please, for all of your homework, just go ahead and type in 3.14. Okay, so now we're going to enter this whole thing into our calculator. And when you enter that in, you get that the volume is 452.16. One of the things I'm grading you on is that you're able to round to the nearest tenth on tonight's homework. So the nearest tenth is this one right after the decimal. In order to round it, you look at this number. If it's 5 or more, you make it go up. If it's 4 or less, it stays the same. It's 6, which is more than 5, so that means this is going to become a 2. You make the 1 into a 2 because this was more than 5. So my volume is actually about 452.2. And that's my answer for that hemisphere. Let's look at this hemisphere over here. This is a hemisphere with a diameter of 24. We can't use diameter in our formula, so we have to turn it into a radius by dividing by 2. So 24 divided by 2 is 12. 12 then is the radius. So now we're going to use our formula. Volume is 4/3 times pi r cubed times 1/2 because it's half of a sphere. We plug things in, so we do 4/3 times 3.14 times 12 times 12 times 12 times 1/2. So we have volume equals 4/3 times 3.14 times 12 times 12 times 12 times 1/2. Please put this in your calculator, and again, when you put this in, you need to just type in 3.14, not put the pi button. Because if you just push the pi button, it's not actually going to match the answer. So we're going to get volume equals 3,617.28. One of the things I'm grading you on is, can you round to the tenths place? This is the tenths place. You look here and see, is that more than 5 or less than 5? 5 or more, you go ahead and make this number higher. 4 or less, you leave it the same. It is 8, which is more than 5. So I'm going to make this into a 3. So my volume is going to be about 3,617.3, and that would be the answer that I would put inside the homework box. If you have any questions, please email me. Have a great day, everybody.